The hangar was alive with motion, the metallic chorus of boots on concrete, the hydraulic hiss of maintenance lifts, the low hum of generators feeding life into the Navy's newest fleet of combat birds. 100 men filled the space, some in flight suits, others in fatigues, all gathered under the cavernous glare of fluorescent lights that buzzed like insects trapped in glass. The air smelled of oil, sweat, and jet fuel, the kind of scent that embedded itself in skin and memory. Captain Marcus Hale stood at the front of the formation, his posture loose but commanding, the kind of presence that made people unconsciously straighten their spines. Hale was a SEAL through and through, square shoulders, weathered face, eyes that measured everything and everyone. He'd seen enough combat to know that confidence could be faked, but survival couldn't. "All right, listen up," he barked, his voice carrying easily over the background noise. "This isn't your standard war game. You screw this up, people get hurt even in simulation. We've got live flight support, we've got real equipment, and I don't want to scrape any of you off a runway because you decided to play hero." There was a ripple of chuckles from the SEAL team clustered near the front. Hale smirked, the corner of his mouth twitching in satisfaction. "Now," he said, pacing slowly in front of them, "any combat pilots here? Real combat pilots, not simulators, not drone jockeys. I mean people who've flown into the fire and come out alive." It was meant half as a challenge, half as a jab. Hale didn't trust pilots. Too much distance between them and the dirt, too much steel between them and the blood. He'd seen too many missions go wrong because someone behind a joystick made the wrong call. For a moment, silence stretched across the hangar. Then, from the back, a single voice answered, calm, measured, and female. "Yes, sir." Heads turned. Conversations stuttered into silence. A woman stood at the edge of the crowd, her hands clasped behind her back, uniform crisp, boots polished to a mirror shine. Lieutenant Commander Aaron Park. Barely 5'4", small enough to be mistaken for an intern in the shadows of giants. Her hair was pulled into a regulation bun, her expression unreadable. Hale's brow lifted. "Didn't see you there, Commander. Your air support, I take it?" "Yes, sir." Her tone was even, steady as an altimeter needle in level flight. "Combat experience?" Hale pressed. Her gaze didn't waver. 126 sorties. Syria, Iraq, and the South China Sea. 6 confirmed extractions under fire. The hangar seemed to grow smaller. A few of the SEALs exchanged skeptical glances. Someone muttered under his breath, "That's classified territory." Hale's smirk returned, though it carried less humor now. "That right? You must have racked up quite the resume." "Just did my job, sir." Her calm irritated him in a way he couldn't explain. Not arrogance, not bravado, just absolute composure. The kind of steadiness he'd only ever seen in people who'd stood on the edge and decided not to blink. "All right, Commander," Hale said, gesturing toward the briefing screen. "Why don't you tell the class how you'd handle a hot extraction under fire, since you've apparently done it more than once?" "This." Erin walked forward without hesitation, her boots striking the concrete with quiet rhythm. She tapped a few keys on the control console, and a topographical map appeared on the screen. Mountains, valleys, red zones marked with potential anti-air placements. "Entry would be from the northeast corridor," she said. "Wind speed favors a low-angle approach at 100 feet above ground level. You'd deploy your recon team here," she pointed, "under cover of terrain masking. Extraction point remains fixed until exfil confirmation. If the LZ is compromised, you reroute to secondary grid Sierra 9, but only if radio silence remains intact. If it's blown, you don't call for evac. You go dark and move to phase black." Her delivery was precise, unhurried, clinical, the kind of description that only came from someone who'd done it, not read it. The SEALs who'd been grinning moments ago now watched in silence. Hale's jaw tightened. When she finished, she stepped back, letting the image fade. "That's how we did it in Kunar," she said quietly. The hangar went utterly still, Hale's head tilted. "Kunar? That op was..." Sealed. Aaron's eyes met his. Yes, sir. For the first time all morning, Hale didn't have a comeback. He just nodded, slowly, studying her like a puzzle that didn't quite fit the picture. The laughter was gone now, replaced by something heavier: respect, or maybe unease. As the briefing wrapped, men began to file out, murmuring to one another. Hale lingered, glancing once more toward the back of the hangar where Erin stood in the shadows, checking her flight tablet. She didn't look like a legend, she looked like a ghost. And for the first time in years, Captain Marcus Hale felt something unfamiliar in his chest. Not doubt, not anger, but curiosity. The cockpit was a cocoon of vibration and noise, a world reduced to glass screens, blinking indicators, and the raw pulse of jet engines tearing through the air. Erin Park's gloved fingers rested lightly on the stick, every muscle in her arms balanced between control and surrender. Below her, the training range stretched like a living map: mountains, riverbeds, and a scattered mock village that would serve as the extraction zone. It was only a simulation, but her body didn't seem to care. Her pulse thudded against her flight harness, her breathing measured in precise intervals, a ritual born of years spent keeping panic at bay. Eagle 1, this is Ground Team Alpha, came Captain Hale's voice over the comms, clipped and calm. We're on approach to grid 6 to 7. Expect heavy opposition. Copy that, Alpha. You're covered, Erin replied. Her tone was even, almost detached, but her eyes flicked constantly between her head's up display and the terrain below. The SEALs moved through the mock structures like ghosts, their heat signatures visible through her targeting systems. The exercise was designed to test joint coordination, air cover, ground movement, extraction timing, but everyone in the hangar's observation deck knew it was really a test of her. Hale had set it up that way. He wanted to see if the quiet pilot with the too clean record could hold her own when things got loud, when seconds meant survival. Contact, 12 o'clock, one of Hale's men shouted. On Erin's screen, red blips flared across the village perimeter: enemy drones simulating RPG positions. Eagle 1, suppress those launchers, Hale ordered. Affirmative, Erin said. Her hands moved before the words were fully out, banking hard left, wings cutting through simulated tracer fire. She dove low, too low for comfort, skimming treetop level and lining up her reticle. A flash, a roar, and two targets vanished from the display. Direct hits, Hale muttered into the mic, half impressed, half unwilling to admit it. Erin brought the jet around for another pass, adjusting for wind shear. Sweat trickled down her neck beneath her helmet. The landscape blurred beneath her, but her mind was elsewhere: Kunar Province, 6 years earlier. The flashback came like turbulence, sudden and violent. The cockpit's vibrations melted into the pounding of rotor blades. She was back in the AH-1Z Viper, night vision painting the Afghan mountains in sickly green hues. Below, a convoy of Marines had been ambushed, 2 vehicles burning, enemy tracers clawing up toward the sky. Negative, Lieutenant, her commander's voice had said through the radio. You are not cleared for return fire. Extraction is off the table. She'd hesitated then just as she hesitated now. Her training screamed obedience. Her conscience screamed louder. They're alive, she'd said, her voice barely audible. Stand down, Park. That's an order. But she hadn't. She'd banked left, pushed the throttle, and dove straight into the valley. Her rockets tore through enemy positions, carving a path for the surviving Marines to escape. She remembered the heat of the flares, the sickening sound of shrapnel striking her fuselage, the dull thud of a round that punched through her canopy and grazed her shoulder. The mission had ended with lives saved, but command had buried it under classified paperwork, a commendation in one hand, a reprimand in the other. The alarm in her current cockpit brought her back. Warning, altitude, the automated voice droned. Erin blinked hard, pulling up just before skimming the virtual terrain. Hale's voice broke through the static. Eagle 1, what the hell was that? You just dropped below safe range. Visual obstruction. Adjusting. She lied smoothly. Her voice didn't betray the tremor running through her hand. She realigned her trajectory, locking on to the final cluster of targets. Missiles away, 3 explosions in perfect rhythm. Silence followed. Area clear, she said. On the ground, Hale's team moved to extraction. Copy that, Eagle. Nice flying, he said, the faintest hint of respect creeping into his tone. In the observation deck, officers exchanged looks. The simulation's telemetry feed showed impossible precision maneuvers executed at speeds no one in the room would have risked. Hale watched the data scroll past, jaw tightening. When Erin landed, the hangar was quiet. She climbed down from the cockpit, removing her helmet. Her hair stuck to her forehead, eyes distant, as if part of her was still miles above, or years behind. Hale approached, studying her the way a hunter studies a weapon. That stunt you pulled dropping below radar? Ballsy, dangerous. No. She looked at him, her expression unreadable. Sometimes the only way to stay alive is to fly where they can't imagine you'd go. Hale wanted to argue, to call her reckless. But something in her tone stopped him. It wasn't arrogance. It was experience. As she walked past, the faint scent of jet fuel and sweat lingered in the air. Hale turned to watch her disappear down the corridor, realizing that what he'd witnessed wasn't luck or simulation skill. It was muscle memory burned in blood and smoke. The sky, he thought, doesn't lie, and neither did she. The debrief room smelled faintly of burnt coffee and ozone, the kind of recycled air that made every conversation feel like it belonged in a vacuum. The walls were white, bare except for a few maps and a single American flag, its colors muted under fluorescent light. Captain Marcus Hale sat at the steel conference table, posture rigid, eyes sharp. Across from him, Lieutenant Commander Erin Park sat perfectly still, hands folded in front of her, the faint hum of the ventilation system, the only sound between them. Hale didn't speak for a full 30 seconds. He just watched her, the way one might study a weapon that didn't behave the way it should. Finally, he leaned forward, elbows on the table. Where the hell did you learn to fly like that? Erin didn't flinch. Training, sir. That wasn't training, Hale said flatly. That was Tier 1 playbook. Low-altitude counter-fire evasion, vector switching at combat throttle, precision maneuvers I've only seen from pilots working with DevGru and Delta. You want to tell me how a Navy pilot learns those tactics? She met his gaze, calm and unshaken. Real world, sir. He exhaled through his nose, a sound somewhere between a sigh and a growl. You're telling me that was combat experience? Yes, sir. Where? Her expression didn't change, but something in her eyes flickered a momentary shadow. That's classified. Classified? Hale repeated, incredulous. You're a lieutenant commander, not CIA. Who classifies a flight record? I don't, sir, she said quietly. But someone did. The silence that followed was heavier than before. Hale leaned back, folding his arms, eyes narrowing. You know what that sounds like to me? I'm sure I do, she replied. It sounds like bullshit. She didn't rise to it, didn't defend herself, didn't argue. Just sat there, her composure infuriating in its precision. Hale had interrogated prisoners of war with less control than this woman showed sitting across from him. He pushed away from the table, pacing toward the window. Outside, the tarmac shimmered in the afternoon heat, planes glinting under a too-blue sky. You know what's funny? He said without turning around. I've been in this business 20 years. I've seen every kind of pilot there is. Hot shots, heroes, fakes. You don't fit any of them. Maybe I don't, Erin said softly. He turned then, studying her again. The calm in her eyes, the lack of ego. It wasn't false modesty. It was something else. Something deeper. By the time she left the room, the base was already buzzing. The simulation had made the rounds on the internal network classified footage, but nothing stayed buried long in military circles. Word spread fast. The quiet woman had flown like a machine, outmaneuvering the AI in ways the system couldn't even register. Some called it luck, others called it impossible. By evening, speculation had evolved into rumor. Someone from operations claimed she'd once been attached to Special Activities Division. A mechanic swore he'd seen her name on a mission roster from Syria that didn't officially exist. The flight data analyst, a young lieutenant named Morris, stayed late to review her service record out of curiosity. What he found made his stomach turn. Entire sections were redacted, service years missing, deployment histories erased. One entry was nothing but a blacked-out block of text with a single visible line. Asterisk authorization. TFBLK01. Asterisk. He brought it to Hale the next morning, printout trembling in his hands. "Sir, this can't be right." Hale skimmed it, eyes narrowing. TFBLK01. "Yes, sir, but there's no task force under that code." "There's not supposed to be," Hale muttered. He looked up. "You ever heard of Task Force Blackbird?" Morris shook his head. "No, sir." "Good," Hale said quietly. "Keep it that way." By afternoon, the rumors were wildfire. Some officers whispered that Erin Park was a fraud who'd doctored her record. Others suggested she was part of an experimental unit that the Pentagon would deny existed. When she walked through the halls, conversations stopped mid-sentence. Eyes followed her, measuring, doubting, afraid. She never acknowledged it. She simply continued her duties, methodical and silent, her presence like a ghost slipping through the machinery of bureaucracy. But Hale couldn't let it go. He spent the next 2 nights in his office, digging through encrypted archives, clearance barriers, and command rosters. Every trail he followed ended the same way: a dead link, a locked file, a polite notice that his clearance wasn't sufficient. By dawn of the 3rd day, he sat in darkness, staring at the classified stamp glowing on his monitor. Asterisk access denied. Asterisk. He rubbed a hand over his face, exhaustion settling deep in his bones. "Who the hell are you, Park?" he whispered. Outside, the first light of morning bled across the base, painting the aircraft in pale gold. Erin Park was already there, walking the flight line alone, her shadow long across the concrete. Hale watched from the window, realizing that the woman everyone whispered about wasn't hiding anything. She'd already been erased. And that kind of silence, he knew, didn't come from shame. It came from orders. The storm came in fast, a wall of gray rolling over the Pacific like something alive. Wind howled across the tarmac, whipping rain sideways in sheets that blurred the horizon. The air traffic tower crackled with static and clipped voices, too many people talking at once, all of them trying to sound calm. Inside the Naval Air Station Command Center, alarms pulsed in steady rhythm. Captain Marcus Hale stood in the middle of the chaos, headset pressed to his ear. "Say again, tower?" he barked. "Transport Charlie 2-1's losing altitude. Engine failure, possible electrical short. They're over open water, 50 miles west. Pilots inexperienced, barely qualified on that model." Ah. Hale's stomach tightened. The aircraft was carrying 20 SEAL trainees, returning from a routine maritime exercise. Kids, mostly. His kids. "What's their current position?" "Last ping puts them at 33,000 feet and dropping. They're in the storm cell." Lightning flashed beyond the window, and thunder rolled a beat later. Somewhere above that sky, a young pilot was watching his instruments die one by one. Hale knew the feeling, the helplessness of watching control slip away, the waiting for a voice that might not come. Command debated options in low, clipped tones. Launching a rescue bird in those conditions was suicide. The air wing was grounded, protocols were clear. But while the officers argued, Hale saw movement at the far end of the hangar. Erin Park, still in flight coveralls, helmet tucked under one arm, walking with deliberate calm toward her aircraft. "Park," Hale called, storming after her. "That's not an order." She didn't stop. "It's not disobedience either," she said, her voice barely audible over the wind. "It's necessity." Those skies will tear you apart. She looked back at him, eyes fierce and unyielding. Then I'll tear back. Before he could answer, she was in the cockpit. The engines roared to life, a defiant sound against the storm. Hale stood in the downpour as the fighter taxied out, rain stinging his face. For a moment, she paused at the runway's edge. He saw her hand lift in a small, sharp salute. Then the jet surged forward and vanished into the gray. Inside the storm, everything was sound and motion. Rain hammered the canopy. Lightning painted the world in ghostly flashes. Erin fought the turbulence, her body swaying with the aircraft's movement, every reflex honed by years of surviving worse. Her radar blinked faintly, cutting in and out as static filled her headset. Then a voice, panicked and cracking. Mayday, Mayday, this is Charlie 2-1. Controls are unresponsive, we're losing both engines. Charlie 2-1, this is Eagle 1, Erin said. Her tone was steady, grounding. I've got you on partial visual. How many souls on board? Two, the pilot stammered. We're spinning. Negative, she said. You're not spinning. You're banking. Correct pitch 2 degrees down, stabilize your yoke, listen to my voice, focus on my voice. Her words cut through the panic like a knife through fog. The pilot's breathing slowed, his voice steadied. Erin's world narrowed to that fragile line of communication, her voice against the storm, his life hanging on every syllable. She matched his altitude, engines screaming, guiding him inch by inch towards stability. When lightning struck her right wing, the cockpit flared white. Her instruments flickered, alarms shrieked. For a moment, she saw something else, the burning valley in Kunar, the Marines trapped below, her own hands slick with blood on the stick. History trying to repeat itself. Not this time. Charlie 2-1. You're gonna level out on my mark, she said, forcing her breath steady. You trust me? Yes, ma'am, the pilot replied, voice breaking. Then fly. She counted down, 3, 2, 1 now, and pulled her own jet into formation, positioning herself just ahead of his descent path. Her altimeter screamed warnings, but she ignored them. She led him through the storm, carving a corridor in the chaos. Below them, the ocean roiled black and endless. In the command center, Hale and the others watched the radar screen in disbelief as two blips, one faint, one bright, moved in tandem, cutting a perfect line back toward the coast. When the first signal broke through the cloud cover and reappeared on radar, the room erupted in shouts. Charlie 2-1's regained control. They're on approach. Hale didn't cheer. He just stared out the window, heart pounding as he whispered, "Bring them home, Park." Minutes later, the transport touched down hard, but safe, sparks trailing as the landing gear scraped asphalt. Erin's jet landed seconds after, one engine coughing smoke. When ground crew reached her, she was barely conscious, fingers still locked on the controls. The next morning, sunlight flooded the base, the storm gone as if it had never existed. Hale found her in the infirmary, pale but awake, an oxygen tube resting beneath her nose. You could have let them handle it, he said quietly. She turned her head toward the window, where the Pacific gleamed gold under the new day. They were mine to bring home, she murmured. Hale stood there for a long time, saying nothing. Outside, the base was already returning to normal engines warming, orders shouted, life moving on. But Hale knew nothing was the same. Somewhere in that storm, the ghosts had settled. As he left the room, Erin closed her eyes, the hum of distant aircraft filling the silence. For the first time in years, it didn't sound like war, it sounded like peace.